Hi, my name is Melissa. I'm a medical student in my last year of school. So I'd just like to impart some advice based on common questions I've gotten from younger students. And one of them harkens back to M1 year, and I'm often asked what I would tell myself as a first year student. First thing I would recommend is to focus on your hobbies. Things that you normally like to do in your spare time. Don't stop doing those once you get into med school. Now that will change. You probably won't have as much free time, so you might have to readjust amount of time you spend on them, but that does not mean you should completely eliminate them just because you're in school. You will burn out if you don't spend time doing stuff you normally like to do. And that is a clear-cut sign for me that I learned that it's getting to be too much, and it's time to rethink how I'm handling everything, and maybe even getting therapy at that point. So it's definitely a good clear-cut indicator for me, and you probably will learn that along the way. Now, other thing that I think is important during your M1 year, since that's the year you're most likely to have the most time, is to explore all potential fields of interest. And one great advice that I got from an upperclassman that I'm glad that I listened to was to keep an open mind. And actually a recommendation was to reach out to faculty in various blocks and ask them about their fields or shadow in their field. I did listen to that and was able to shadow some people in fields I didn't end up specializing in, but I got a better perspective as to what that field was like. And so I give that advice back to the younger students to do similar, so you can get a better idea as you might find something that you didn't think you liked that you now want to explore. The other thing that I learned over the years is how important networking is, and to attend as many networking events that you can. It's easier to do in the preclinical years as you have more flexible time to attend them. But I think that they lead to very interesting conversations if you talk to other faculty or attendings at these events. Now, I've often seen people go to the events and only talk to people they know or other students, and I think that's a misuse of the time, and that you should really be meeting some new people or getting introduced to others, faculty who may be important, maybe future mentors, may lead to research projects. So I recommend doing that and getting more exposure. And other thing I recommend is if you're interested in doing research, to start doing that in M1, as the later years tend to get too busy. Not that that's impossible to do, but you tend to have less time to do that. And on the other side, research projects tend to take some time to publish. So if your goal is to ultimately publish, that can take quite a bit of time, and you don't want to be scrambling to do that in your last few years. If research is important to you, you don't need to do a bunch of research, but if that is your interest, then I recommend starting that early or finding research mentors and projects to get on. More on the academic side of things is to not use too many resources, study resources, as that can get overwhelming. So just stick to one or two and you should be fine. So I noticed that for step one, that there's so many resources out there and it got to be too much. So step two, I limited the amount of resources that I looked into, and it was way better than trying to juggle many resources and trying to get through all of them. So definitely recommend minimizing the resources. I learned that test taking is the most stressful time for me, and interestingly, a lot of people also have said a similar thing. So I know it's not just me. And the key to that is to focus on wellness right before and during that stressful time. Other thing, the advice I would give is to just believe in yourself, believe that you can pass those board exams and do well. As I often found that there were times when I didn't think I could do it, but I ultimately did it. And this has been the case, a similar experience for other people as well. So just make sure to keep believing in yourself. And in a similar vein, I think an advice that I would have given myself, having struggled with this, is to find ways to de-stress. And one of the things that I found most effective that I will carry with me through life is the CBT skills, or cognitive behavioral therapy skills, that I learned along the way. If you know there are certain things that stress you in particular, to be proactive in doing that. So for example, I am very stressed out about exams and standardized tests. So the first time I went in there not fully prepared in terms of like self-coping skills. And then after that, I was like, I can't do that again without making sure I was the most zen possible. And so I implemented some techniques that I had learned, also meditation skills that I learned for myself and had been putting into practice even prior to that, so that when the second board exam came around, it still was very stressful, but it was not nearly as bad as the first one had been, even though I felt like the second board exam was harder than the first. It was a easier time for me, like mentally, than it had been in the past. And then other thing I recommend is to stay connected with friends, even during those hard times. Oftentimes, I found that others have gone through similar struggles, and even those not in medicine have some great outside perspective to give to you when you encounter challenges along the way. The other lesson learned was talking to upperclassmen for the most real advice and just general support, as I often found that they have gone through similar struggles or had asked similar questions in the past, and they have gotten answers on their end. So it was very helpful to talk to them and get that support, as well as getting connections for potential mentors and research opportunities. So definitely reach out to them and don't be a stranger. And the other advice or lesson that I learned was it's okay to get critical feedback, especially in the beginning. And because you can always improve from there. And I often think it's important to actually proactively ask for advice, and so you won't be surprised towards the end as to what your feedback is. And for me, it took some time to be okay with getting this critical feedback, but now I am okay with it, and with this idea that I can always get better and learn something out of it. Even in those bad experiences or feeling like this feedback isn't deserved, I always try to repeat in my head that this is a learning lesson, whether that's a learning lesson academically or a lesson about interpersonal interactions. There's always something that you can learn out of a situation, whether it's a good or a bad outcome. So that's my advice from that. What I learned throughout the years, they kind of built upon each other, was to work on efficiency. And I recommend giving yourself time limits to work on something and then just moving on. As like one thing, for example, in the beginning years, you'll have to do some presentations every week or so. And you can spend hours on that. I know I've spent like 8 hours doing edits on it, content, and making the PowerPoint, do special effects, but at the end of the day, you only have so much time. And so it's fine to spend that much time in the beginning if you're getting something out of that. If you're learning the content better through spending more time, then it's worthwhile. But I would recommend setting a limit, like max 4 hours to doing that. Otherwise, you'll have less time to study and less time for your personal free time. And that comes into play again towards the clinical years, as you'll get case presentations, other presentations to do for residents and faculty. And you start to have very limited time between your time on a rotation and your free time and your time to study all at the same time as doing extra outside work. So definitely setting a limit for your time is what you need. And once it's done, it's done. You did the best you can. Yeah, I hope all of this information is helpful to you in some way, as a lot of it came through learning on the go, through challenges, personal experiences that I encountered throughout the years. But just know that you can make it, you can get to the other side, and it will all be okay. Whether it's a good day or a bad day, tomorrow's a new day, you learned something, you'll tackle the issue and be great in the end. You'll be just fine, and you'll just look back on everything, just realize you had a good time. Overall, you're on a great journey, and it'll all turn out well. Thank you for listening. Bye.